you. That's all.
Okay, we are going to wait for the audience to spool in. I'm expecting a few people to arrive. We've got over 200 people registered for this webinar, and we just have to wait a couple of minutes. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us at the webinar. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a really distinguished group of panelists. We have Yoshida-san from who is the ETOA ambassador, brand ambassador in Japan, who has had a very distinguished career in the Japanese outbound market. We have Marco De Riva, who is head of operations at Mickey Travel, one of the most well-established inbound companies handling Asian traffic into Europe. I'm delighted to be joined by Rakshana Bekam, who is sitting in Gujarat from representing TBO.com, a global distribution platform based in India. We have Hannah Pearson from Per Anderson Consulting Specialists in the Southeast Asian tourism market. And you have myself to try and organize proceedings. Now, as you can imagine, with a webinar which is stretching across Asia and over to London and out to you, we're having one or two minor issues with technicalities. But what I'd like to do is hand over to Yoshida-san, who's prepared a presentation on the Japanese market. I'd just like to say before I start sharing the screen on this, is that the Japanese inbound industry were there almost at the start of ETOA. They were the first non-Anglophone market to be involved with ETOA, and we have been championing the cause of Japan as an origin market really for the last 30 years. And the reason for this is that Japan is, apart from North America, the longest established inbound market into Europe. They've been coming to Europe in numbers since the early 1960s. This is over 60 years ago. And this is, as the phrase goes, they are an old friend, and you cannot have a new old friend. And there is much to learn and much to understand in terms of the Japan market. Yoshida-san, I'm going to share the screen and you can do your presentation.
Okay. So,
we're going to do this. I need to get it up, and then I got to get it.
Maybe Tom-san, it's maybe this document is a little bit old one, I think.
All right. Sorry.
Okay. Maybe I sent yesterday the new one.
All right, you have a new one.
It's a very short one.
Sorry, I've got the old one. Why don't I do beg your pardon. I'll exit this and then I'll find a new one. Then what we'll do is we'll move on to a more general discussion. And while I find the old one, we'll go back to your presentation in a little bit, if I may, Yoshida-san. Marco, could we just touch on the China market? And what is the prospect of recovery in the China market at the moment?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for inviting me today. The prospects are good. As you know, China has reopened to a certain number of European countries authorization to travel for visit for tourist reason. So we start seeing now the first few groups coming into Europe, and it seems to be selling well, but obviously it's just the start. So they have to rebuild all the flight infrastructure. There are obviously quite a big bottleneck for visa authorization, as you know, is one of the main barriers to the Chinese to travel. But the signs are good. we always suspected that the real recovery will really start with the Golden Week in October, which is the first, the next long week bank holiday, which affect the Chinese market, is when we're going to see a really number to not to mirror obviously the pre-COVID situation, but surely to have more interesting number. But the signs are there. So since the beginning of July, we've seen a steady increase on the number of Chinese traveling into Europe. So the prospects are definitely good, and we are quite optimistic that it's going to recover fairly quickly.
And do you think, at what stage do you think you're going to hit 2019 numbers?
Well, it's difficult, Tom, to have an actual time frame for that. All the infrastructure over in China have been a mothball for over 3 years when it comes to outbound, especially to Europe. So there are so many factors, from flight to ability of operator to sustain the demand, ability of Europe to sustain the demand on large number of Chinese coming back, as well as visa. As I said earlier, embassies have laid off quite a lot of staff over the period that China was closed, so they have to rebuild completely all the workflow to make sure that there is sufficient workforce there to deal with the high demand. We used to have problem before COVID. You can only imagine what the problem is going to be once there's going to be a high demand of people traveling into Europe. So it's going to take a while, I believe. I don't believe next year will be the right one. Probably the one next after that. So we're talking about 2025. Maybe more realistic to have a similar number.
I think that's interesting. And do you find that this is going to be a question that crops up throughout this discussion, I'm sure, that the markets that we're talking about were looking reasonably buoyant in 2019 and things were looking good for 2020, but the prices that we're going to be presenting them with in 2023, 24 are going to be very, very different from the ones they said goodbye to 4 years ago. We've got inflation and real constraints on capacity in Europe. Do you think there may be a sort of price sticker shock almost in the Chinese market coming up?
It could be a deterrent, of course, but you have to understand that in China, 5% of the population is considered very wealthy. Mm-hmm. That's 70 million people.
Yeah.
So if you put into perspective the number of wealth there is across the country and based on a population of 1.5 billion people, obviously there is enough income there to sustain the price increase. What did I want to say? That yeah, as much as packages has increased, the Chinese as well are well known to be good in saving. So they have quite a lot of saving and they want to travel again. But obviously maybe it's going to be more upmarket type of product that we're going to see an increase to begin with rather than your budget tour. But one of the main risks of rise prices in Europe and worldwide is the fact that expectation has increased at the same rate. So well before customer might have been a bit more accommodating on the level of service, these days they can be more picky because obviously they are paying good money to stay in 4 or 5 star hotel or to have coaches and everything else that comes with it, or restaurant. They are paying much more than they used to, so their expectation is higher. I think it's inevitable. That is going to be one of the main challenges that we're gonna face when market resume. At those prices, we'll have to make sure that we actually meet that expectation.
Right. Okay, I'm going to just break it there, if I may, because Yoshida-san, I have your correct presentation here. Thank you for being so patient. I will now share the screen again, if I may. Or I hope this is the correct presentation at any rate. Over to you, Yoshida. But you're on mute.
So
No,
now okay. So I start. My name is Hiroyuki Yoshida. I am a brand ambassador in Japan. And also I run a travel agency called Turquoise Company Limited in Japan now. So today I will explain and give some information about the Japanese market of overseas travel. As following today's subject. But this subject is maybe subject of 3 is maybe this subject overlap a little with another subject. So I will talk about it together. So please next one. Okay. So I will explain about the current trend 2023 business in Japan. So Japanese market continues to show the lowest willingness to travel overseas, unfortunately. The latest statistics show the number of international trips from Japan is down by 60% in comparison to 2019. I'm sorry, I mistake 40%, but corrected 60%. And on the other hand, inquiries and bookings for international travel are slowly on the increase now. Regarding to survey in March, amongst all the Japanese travelers, 14% people will travel abroad within 1 year. And the highest proportion of travelers are men in their 20s, 29%, and women in their 20s, 28%. And men in their 30s, the 22%, means young generation people is moving even now. And this is a very important, the paragraph, the weak yen and the surging aviation fuel prices. International trips have become a luxury, and Japanese people can no longer casually enjoy them, unfortunately. And overall, the market suggests that customers will feel more comfortable traveling long haul once the situation between Russia and Ukraine is strained. Next, please. So 2024, 2025 expectation. We can expect see a big decline on brochure package tours and more focus on tailor-made tours and special interest tours for groups and FIT travelers. And increase on the student group market, but this is one of the interest tours for groups. Enhanced travel offers and the booking system using digital technology. Implemented online booking and check-in systems, cashless payment, and use of QR codes to provide information locally. But currently, 40% of travel companies believe that the industry will return back before COVID levels by 2025, not 2024. Next, please. Challenges and opportunities. And post-pandemic, the challenge is for travel agencies to Japanese overseas travel may include the following. The needs of preferences of travelers have changed after the pandemic, and travel companies will be faced with the challenge to develop and introduce new travel platforms and products, like wellness tourism or active tourism, something like this. And travel plans will continue to be subject to uncertainty. Therefore, it is important to travel agents to gain the trust of travelers by implementing policies that allow travelers to flexibility, change or cancel their plans. And also, this paragraph is same as before. Travel agents will need to strengthen the hygiene control measures, blah, blah, blah. Maybe this is the same as before. So finally, based on the challenges, travel agent will be needed to mindful about not only to improve traveler safety measures, but also to respond to new market needs. So I hope Japanese market for travel overseas will come back soon, maybe 2024. Unfortunately, 2023 is, as I explained you already, nothing moving at all. So please, I really hope we'll have a recovery. We will recover next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Yoshida-san, thank you so much for that. I'll just stop, remove the screen. That's great. Thank you so much for that. I mean, by the way, we'll both a recording of this discussion and Yoshida-san's presentation will be put up on the website, and Yoshida-san will correct that 40% to 60% before we post it. That's a very sobering but realistic take on what's happening in Japan. I don't know, Marco, if you want to comment on it at all.
No, there is not much to add to what Yoshida-san has just presented. Is what we experience on a daily basis. The recovery from the Japanese market is much slower than others for all the reasons that has been put on the presentation. One thing that has not been said, for example, is that the government has put a lot of subsidizing to promote inbound to Japan. So a lot of agents has focused since for quite a long time on inbound rather than outbound. These are stopped in June, so only from June onward, the agents have started reopening the preparation for the outbound. So they were not actively really promoting Europe as such until very recently. So we are starting really only now, apart from a handful of agents, we're starting really to see now some movement. And while there is a willingness for the Japanese to come back to Europe, as Yoshida-san correctly said, there are many barriers, cost being probably the biggest one at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I must tell everyone on this webinar that if they want to pose any questions, and please pose any questions you wish, there is a question and answer feature in Zoom, which please use, because it will makes my job easier anyway, but it also adds to the general flow of information. Hannah, you're very much an expert in Southeast Asia. I'm wondering if you would like to comment on the other markets that there are. And one of the great virtues of the moment, I suppose, really over the last 5 years, has been the enormous growth in alternatives in the region. It's no longer just China and Japan. It's a whole range of other origin markets. So what's your take from Kuala Lumpur?
Sure, thank you, Tom. Well, I mean, if we're talking about Southeast Asia, maybe I'll just define it quickly. So we're talking countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam. Outbound travel is there, it's popular, it's happening. I would say it is not back to those 2019 levels still, and it's being very much held back by those high prices that you were talking about earlier, Tom. And also a lack of aviation capacity. So right now, Southeast Asian international seat capacity in June is still about 23% down on 2019. So it's actually the third worst performing region in the world. So the worst is Northeast Asia, driven by China, then it's East Europe, I guess impacted by Russia, Ukraine, and then it's Southeast Asia. So we still have a way to go, and that lack of capacity is keeping those airfares high, which of course, when you're looking at that long haul into Europe is a big factor, particularly when it comes to groups. Travel agents here are really struggling to get group seats, to get competitive group fares from airlines as well, to be able to send out those groups. I think we're definitely seeing a lot of FIT, and different markets are recovering at different rates. So of course, Singapore, you know, it was there's this tiny city state. During the pandemic, there's not much you can do, right? You can go around, how many times can you go around your own city? So they really had this will to travel out as soon as they could, they were going. Whereas some of the other countries, it's been a bit slower, and again, down to visa constraints as well. So I know Indonesia, Thailand in particular, Philippines were suffering with having to jump through all the hoops that they need to be able to get those European visas to come in. But if you look at somewhere like Switzerland, Switzerland Tourism have actually announced that they predict that Southeast Asian arrivals are going to go back to 2019 arrivals by the end of this year. I think Singapore has already exceeded last year their 2019 levels. I think Malaysia was close to that. So there was definitely this pent-up demand to Europe. Europe is always that evergreen destination for Southeast Asian travelers. They always want to go there. For many reasons, whether it's to visit family, whether it's to go shopping, to see those cultural, iconic, must-do sites. But right now, yeah, it's still being restrained primarily, I think, down to that aviation capacity and the fact that it's not been built back yet.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you're saying, because there's almost a tension between this trend that everyone talks about, which is for small group sizes and more nature, less crowds, and pulling against the basic instinct of all travelers, not only long haul travelers, to go and see the things they want to see. And the things they want to see tend to be the bucket list destinations that everybody else wants to see. And we immediately run into the surrounding capacity and price. If anyone gets out of bed and wants to go to Paris or London at the moment, or indeed Rome, Florence, or Venice, there are no bargains to be had there at all. These are expensive areas. Okay, is there any particular origin market that's showing the strongest growth at the moment from the ones you listed?
I would say it's probably Singapore that is still leading that. Although I would say whether they will continue to, it's a kind of a question mark. You know, they had this pent-up demand, their economy is not predicted to do so well this year. So whether that's later going to impact the year-end plans for constraining that. Indonesia is always a big market. And like you say, you know, it's 190 million people. It's a huge country. It's got this immense growing middle class. It really has high potential. I think we're also seeing a lot of interest from the Philippines. Again, if I use my Switzerland tourism example, they've recently opened up their satellite office in the Philippines because they see this extra interest from the Philippines coming in to Switzerland. So I would say those are some of the markets to look out for. And Malaysia, particularly to the UK, is always there. That's with those Commonwealth links that they have, and so many people studying there, and friends and family.
Okay. Roshana, I mean, you've been sitting there very patiently in Gujarat, waiting for your turn to speak. Is there anything in particular about the Indian market? This is on anecdote, but the Indian market was one of the first Asian markets to start traveling last year. I remember the royal treatment given to an Indian group arriving in Switzerland. I won't say it's an unusual experience for Indian groups to be welcomed with open arms, but this was this is what happened in Switzerland last year. It was a kind of red letter day when you were very much the first country to start traveling in Europe last year. What is the situation now? I mean, how are you compared to 2019?
So, hi, Tom. So, as you already said, the Indian market is the first market to start to travel to Europe. This is the same again. Indians still willing to travel, and it's a high demand. The current, like, we talk about the numbers. So we have already surpassed the 2019 numbers for some of the destinations. Like if you talk about the Switzerland, our top 5 destinations from India, it's like definitely starting from London. It goes to then France and Switzerland. And Switzerland is the highest in demand from Indian market. Okay, so more of the the technologies have taken over, like the advancement in the technologies where the platforms have been used. Okay, and like virtual realities and like kind of, do you have the transforming the travel marketing? A lot of marketing had happened and still happening. So as I'm here in Gujarat doing the road show, so we do almost 26 road shows in India. So India is the like vast market, not only like the metro cities, but definitely like the smaller cities in India, people travel from there. FIT definitely is picked up very well, but the group series departures from India has grown. Each and every departures as operated and still operating. So it's not about the 2019 trend, but it is changed drastically. People are willing to accept the change in the pricing, in everything related to just want to travel and experience. It's a once in a lifetime kind of a opportunity. Okay, this is a mindset now for the travelers. And we don't see Europe season is overing for India. It is not. It is extending, more and more extending. The reason is the schools, like, what we used to have, like kind of the regular method that we had the school holidays during the summer season in India, like starting from March till June. But now the international board have come, a lot of students have changed the school methods. The holidays have been changed in 3 terms. So for the Europe as a season for Indian market will be extended till October. Yeah. So it is really, really growing high demand. People are willing to pay anything just to travel. So we had like, the taxation issues, like, it was in the news that the TCS is going to come in India and this is going to be a big thing for us. But fortunately and luckily, like the TCS have been extended. That is not going to come now in place. It will go to October. So until then, we see the numbers growing more and more.
So just to put it in a nutshell, you almost like the American market, the Indian market is back. There are some destinations which are doing better than 2019, and
exactly.
the real question is what shape the demand and what the more than the recovery, what the future demand will look like in 24. Are there any specific trends in 24 you would look for?
Yeah, so more of the niche segment will increase, more growth for the niche tech, like destination weddings, cruising. Okay, this will be the main things which will definitely take up place, as well as the more of experiential travel. Sustainability will be increasing in 2024 for sure.
Are you saying that the customers will be looking for sustainable options?
Exactly. It is already they are looking, and this will increase more.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So we already started. India has already accepted the sustainable tourism, and we already acted on that. thanks to all the media platforms where we are doing the marketing by the tourism boards, like Switzerland Tourism Board is more active in India, which is really helping us to increasing our numbers in terms of sustainable tourism. It's not a 3-nighters stay now in Switzerland, it is now 15 nighters. So that is what is a change in the game totally.
That's a huge shift. Thank you for that. We have questions posed by our audience, which is great news. Really, Yoshida-san, you mentioned special interest tours. What are the main trends? Can you do you see, can you cite any specific examples of special interest tours? And are there any specific ones that seem to be growing or not? You're on mute, sorry. No.
Special interest tours means normally Japanese tourists used to go to Europe, and then they see or they eat something, and they eat just a sightseeing point, culture-wise and historical-wise. But now it's a little bit changed. They really want to do something in another countries, and also they're very, very interested of some something which so interested things. I mean, like for example, just to make something in the foreign countries, and also to know more about historical things or something like this. Not only see, not only watch, that's all. So this kind of travel style is now getting more popular for the Japanese tourists now. And then also always the Japanese tourists is going to with package tours. I mean a group tour with tour escort. But now little bit changed. They prefer to go to by themselves, and then they arrange by themselves, and they choose the any tours by themselves. So I think it's Japanese travel style is a little bit near to the European style, I think. I hope.
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, what you're implying is that certainly the Japanese market, and I believe, and the Indian market as well, we're from Roshana as well, is that we're looking at the great experiential statement that is dominating marketing discussions. Really, during the pandemic, everyone was switching to this. Is this your perception, Marco, as well?
Sorry, Tom, can you repeat the question?
I was just saying,
problem with the
Yoshida-san was saying that one of the big trends in special interest tours is actually that the clients are not wanting just to watch and eat, but to actually experience the destination, do things there, be part of the be part of the destination. And I was saying that this is echoes the great experiential tourism. I would say that what there's been more of an explosion in discussion of experiential tourism than there's been a manifestation on the ground. But everyone's looking forward to there being a growth in experiential tourism. And I was just saying, is this your perception as well?
Absolutely, Tom. And there was an increased interest in the special tours. We saw an increase in demand before the market stopped, and we expect this will be one of the first one to recover. As a matter of fact, there is quite a lot of requests for this type of tour where clients have a more deep experience. You have to remember that a lot of Japanese travelers are not first-time traveler anymore. They've been to Europe, they've done the typical standard tour of France or Italy or Switzerland. So they really want now to come back and have more of an understanding of the culture, of the food, and experience really like a local almost.
Okay, that's great. We've got sorry, Hannah Rakshana, do you see a similar growth in special interest tours in your areas?
Yes, Tom, actually, like, like we have never imagined people are traveling to France. They're going to go to Lebrun Valley, exploring the Lebrun Valley. Okay, it is kind of a different kind of experience. People really want to go in deep in the destination, explore more of the farm stays, more of the, if Switzerland look about, like we never thought about it in India, but this is where the things are changing drastically as experiential travel, not only just touching the destination. So this is really increasing.
Hannah?
For Southeast Asia, I would say yes, for the higher end tours, there is definitely that element of wanting to distinguish themselves from others. But I would say that there are still plenty of the budget, mid-range, what we call the series tours, those leisure tour groups that are going out, that are still operating the same kind of itineraries that they were pre-pandemic and going out and selling that, the kind of bulk standard, all the destinations that you would expect with nothing particularly special interest about it. So yes, for the high ends, but the bulk of it, I would say we're not seeing that yet. I think there's a lot of surveys out around FITs, and that's something that they are looking for. But when it comes to group tours, I think that hasn't quite translated to the demand from travel agents here yet.
Okay, fantastic. Now we have another question, which is just on group size. I'm just saying, when people talk about a small group, I'm going to change the question slightly. What number would you put on that? How would you define a small group? I mean, there are people who used to do tour management would regard 35 people as a small group because they really want to see 48 people in a proper group, but that's the old days. I'm just intrigued. How would you define a small group, Marco?
A small group these days would be anything between 5 and 15 people, Tom. We've seen an increase in demand for those type of groups, definitely, especially family traveling together. But it's nothing like what we were discussing. It's a good question from Annabelle, because we discussed that quite at length at the beginning of COVID. Will the group travel trend change once it resumes? The reality is that the real group travel has not really changed. I don't think we can actually afford too many small groups, especially because of the prices of coaches and the shortage of drivers that there is. We need really to fill them up as much as we can. So yes, airline capacity could be an obstacle, but generally speaking, your typical package has remained more or less the size that it used to be, especially from Asia, like countries like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, the Indonesian that was mentioned by Hannah, and all those markets. The normal size is very much with every agent is trying to concentrate the PAX collection into as the good size to make it affordable to travel.
It's interesting you say that, because it's not just price. If you are interested in sustainability, and I assume from the discussion lots of people are interested in sustainability, large groups are much more sustainable than small groups, dramatically so. Having 48 people in a vehicle as opposed to 2 really does hugely reduce your carbon footprint. But do you think there's an interesting tension there? Hannah, is this something people comment on?
You know what? I mean, it's again one of those things that's a bit similar to special interest. Again, when you see all these studies coming out from Southeast Asia, there is a lot of interest around sustainable accommodation, for example. We saw these surveys from Booking.com and Agoda around that. But I have not yet really seen a mainstream travel agent in Southeast Asia advertising on the merits of a tour being sustainable. I haven't seen that. I think for sure there are niche travel agents who are focusing on that. but I have not seen a big one going out and being like, this is a carbon neutral tour, or we are really having a light carbon footprint here. I've not seen that. I think it will come.
I think, well, the short answer is it has to come, but the question is when. But Rakshana, you're saying this is already happening in India, but
So we for us as a group, travel is really increased. The number, like, it is not the same, it is not reduced. Okay, 15 to the 100 people they did travel. The reason the airline have increased their connectivity from India, like more of the airlines like the British Airways, they have started the new connectivity. Indigo, the Indian carrier, have started doing a lot of more of connectivity to Europe. So this has really helped the group's departure guys to operate the group. So the group size starts from the 45. We also operated 250 passengers to Europe. And there are still many of the MICE and the smaller groups, the departures, even the family groups are operating.
okay. Now, I'm just sort of having a quick look. I was trying to find this answer for the question. Could you list the countries that are open to the Chinese market in Europe? This is the famous white list, which I believe only applies to group travel. FIT travel for Chinese is more or less open into Europe. Marco, just offhand, do you know the list of countries that are open to Chinese groups in Europe?
Yes,
I know the UK
the
is not
second,
on that list.
yeah, we're all waiting for the third list to be released soon. It hasn't been released yet. So on the second list, at the top of my memory, the main countries that have been open to travel for groups are France, Greece, Spain, Italy, Denmark, Portugal, Slovenia, and then you got smaller countries like Armenia, for example. Serbia and Croatia are open up as well, and Albania. Those are the main countries on the list.
I think this is a factual question, which requires a factual answer. And I will get a copy of the list that we will post up on the website alongside Yoshida-san's presentation and a recording of this webinar. But that's a good question. And I'm sorry I was unable to really reel off the list. And as Marco says, we are awaiting a new one to come out. I would mention in passing that and I'm shamelessly name dropping here, I was at a reception in Brussels last week, and the Chinese ambassador to the EU came over, and he said, Europe has got to show that it's welcoming to Chinese. And there is a strong perception, certainly officially, that Europe is not making a big effort in welcoming the Chinese groups. They took, I believe they took some offense at the move to restrict Chinese visitors in the second wave of COVID, and they took grave offense at that. So I think it's quite important. Maybe this is something we'll get onto in a second, that it's very difficult to do the right thing in tourism. It's very easy to do the wrong thing in tourism. It's quite extraordinary. And I maybe will just use that as an excuse to dig into the issue that we've not addressed at the moment, and mercifully does not impact Japan, which is the visa situation, both for Europe and the UK. How are you finding your clients obtaining visas at the moment, China? Is this a big issue in India? Hello?
Hello.
Well,
It's question to
all right, okay. All right, Yoshida-san, while Rakshana is reconnecting, you might wish to answer. Have you got a perception on visas?
I think regarding to the visa, for Japanese people, they don't care anything about the visa. So, but now I want to repeat the inquiries is so much inquiries increased now. Yes, so I hope in the next year we will have a organized tour to the Europe. But one big problem is economic condition is most critical factor in Japan now. So especially weak Japanese yen. If this one is going to good, maybe everybody wants to go to Europe, not only younger generation people.
If we could, well, you concentrated in your presentation that fuel prices and the war in Ukraine were a blocking factor in bringing people over to Europe, and I think this is probably something that every origin market shares. This is not a quick. Roshana, can you hear me?
Yeah, Tom.
I was just wondering if visas were an issue in India, both in terms of getting Schengen visas and in terms of getting UK visas.
It was Schengen visas, definitely. We had a lot of challenges in India to get the visa, but then like the people were very much focused, I think so, very much adamant to travel. Okay, so however, whatever. So they took all the precaution of, applying in advance to get the visa. And then like we definitely faced a lot of challenges because of the less of, the teams in the VFS in India. And this is where the all challenges started. Only Switzerland and France were giving the dates. Okay. But now this has changed. Gradually it is changing. Now France is giving a lot of dates. Switzerland is opening a lot of dates. Okay. Even Germany is coming up. Spain is coming up. So it's changing a lot of things for us and easing out. Okay. So we are crossing through the channel of the difficulties in visa. But I think so this is going to change a lot of things in the next 2-3 months.
And do you think the situation in the UK with visas, because sometimes we hear some adverse comments about the difficulty of obtaining a visa for the UK, is that easing at all, or is it
UK for UK visa for Indians are more easy because UK it works very differently than Schengen visa. Okay, they have a very clear terms about it, like this is what is the thing, the charges, and they have 3 terms of you apply, you pay this, and you get in 3 days visa. So people get a UK visa very easily for Indians. Okay, for myself, I got it in 3 days. I know what amount I have to pay for that days.
That's the first piece of good news about the UK I've heard in a very long time, I have to say.
Yeah, there's no challenge for Indians for UK visa. Yes, Schengen was there, but it's like even for the groups, you can imagine I had the MICE group traveling starting from tomorrow. It's a MICE group happening in Paris. Okay, and out of 60 packs, 30, like 50% visas got rejected. So this is also kind of challenges are there, but then it's like we're managing somehow and we're sending people anyhow to applying and through any other country.
You're very cheerful for what sounds like a major cost of business if 50% of the visas get rejected. And Marco, is this something that you run across?
Yes, it is quite normal across all market that require a visa to come. It used to be a problem before. It is even amplified these days. There was a question about Chinese market bottleneck. Definitely, there are big bottleneck. They are taking now slots for September, October. So it's going to be one of the main challenge. And we have experienced a lot of problem with all the market once they reopened up. When it came to the visa application was the main obstacle for traveling, with a lot of last minute rejection and all the trouble that comes for operator to try and absorb those huge losses, really.
Did you hear that people have got problems with traveling and obtaining visas? I mean, we heard all sorts of horror stories last year of whole groups being basically unable to leave because their passports were still at the visa issuing office. Is this something you hear about down in the rest of Southeast Asia?
These things have happened, yes. Particularly Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand. There's always difficulties. Vietnam. I think that things have got slightly easier, and agents are wiser. You know, they know which embassies are the ones who process the visas fastest, and therefore they make sure that they jig around the group itineraries so that that's the country they go to first. I think what's kind of interesting for Malaysia and Singapore, and this just happened in the last couple of weeks, is all about the travel waiver form that they will need to fill in that EU is implementing next year. And it has been really picked up in the press here as if the EU is specifically targeting Malaysians and Singaporeans and, adding these additional, requirements on them without that context that, everybody who is not an EU citizen is going to have to do this. They haven't, that part they kind of left out of the articles. So there may well have been some kind of panic triggered, I think, amongst agents last week and clients looking to travel to the EU next year going, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do this and apply for this, and we're being picked on and it's not fair. It's, I think, a lack of information, the proper information really being given out through the media for that.
Okay. Now, we've got about 5 minutes to go because we'll be closing at 11 o'clock. I really just want to know, we've got one last question that we haven't answered, which is the potential of Asian student group markets. I think I'd like to open this up and just say, how big a potential is there for student markets for Europe? And is there one thing that Europe could do to make Europe more welcoming in your market, as the markets that we're talking about? I suppose, can I start with Yoshida-san? What is the prospect for the not 24, 25? Do you think there's a promising market for the student group market? And is there one thing we can do to make Japan feel really welcome?
Yes, I think the student market is very good at this moment. They used to go to Asian countries like Korea or Taiwan, somewhere. But now with the European destination, they recognize it's a nice, very good area to educate of student people. So that's why I think getting popular student tour to the Europe in few years, I think so.
Okay, Rakshana.
Yes, Tom. So definitely it's again, like, it's a good business for India as well. The student it's kind of a very good business, and it is really picked up from India as well. Only thing is, like, we look forward for the more of accommodation option for the students and ease on the documentations and the visa process for the students. That is what is more, and the more of the the college and the institution options in Europe. This is what we have heard from the most of the parents and the students, like, they're looking forward for this and they keep researching for it. So this will help in more options for them in terms of moving to the European countries for the studies.
Okay, Marco.
Probably we have seen an increase in demand again in student traveling from Asia to Europe. I think the key is probably safety. You have to make sure that you pick the right destination, you pick the right place to accommodate them, and you make the parents feel safe that their children can actually travel to Europe. I think it's a key aspect that we need all to be aware of.
Thank you. And Hannah, is there any final remark you wish to make?
Not much to add to that. I think, like Marco said, safety is key, really.
Okay. Well, look, thank you very much, audience, for listening to us. And thank you particularly to the panel. Thank you, Yoshida-san, Marco, Rakshana, and Hannah, for sparing your time. I think one thing that we've learned from this exercise is I think that Asia is far too big an origin market to cover as if it's a unitary space. Each country is different. It has its own requirements. And I think this is something we need to explore in more detail in future discussions. But this has been an excellent insight into a very, very big topic. The last word from me is that I need to point out that we have our own Asian marketplace taking place online on the 21st of November. It's naturally constrained by being online, but it enables buyers from throughout the Asia Pacific area to come on and network with suppliers. So do keep that in your diary. More information is available on our website. And that's really it from me. I would like to thank everybody here again. This is going to be posted up on the website. The Yoshida-san's excellent presentation will be there, and I hope a list of the white list of countries that Chinese group visitors can come to. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.
Right.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.